it is.
Alrighty. Alrighty, and we are live. Welcome to the Windy City Review. I am your host, Queenie Green. We have my co-host here, Paul Collins, best man. And we have today our special guest, Alderman Maria Hadden from Rogers Park. And for those that are not familiar with that ward, can you tell us what ward do you represent?
I represent the 49th Ward.
49th Ward.
Fighting 49th.
So this show is fun. It's gonna be fun for me, just because we spoke over well, not the break, but before we started. I'll say I'm from the Rogers Park area. Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay. Well, you know.
I mean, I
You can claim that.
I spent at least
6 months.
no. I
Okay.
spent at least 12 years or so because I went to grammar school and then high school.
Okay, I give you that.
I worked at Buffalo Joe's.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to grammar school and high school. We kind of bounced around. So I'm from there.
Okay, I
I'm
give you
repping
that.
it. I'm repping it. And so when we're doing the show, like I told you before, Paul brings the
questions.
the technical aspect. He has all the details, and I like to come from the community side of
She shoots
the
from
show.
the hip. That's all.
I come from the streets of the show. What he's gonna ask, I'm gonna break it down so the community understands. So
Right.
those people that are not, totally into politics, that just want to know a little bit more, but they don't know the technical part, I break that down for them. And that's how we do the show.
All right.
Almost like the Doctor and the Diva, right?
There you go.
All right.
And as always, the views expressed are not necessarily those of Sour Patch Media or Windy City Review. We'd like to give hands up to Cello and Sour Patch Media for sponsoring us. Thank you, Cello.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get into this. Let me, full disclosure, I have followed Alderman Hadden when she first ran. Let me tell you, she takes these very interesting pictures, and her facial expressions are just, they make me laugh. And so
Yeah.
the first time I saw her picture, I said, "Who is this?" And so from her picture, I started kind of following her and seeing what she was doing. And I'm interested. So you are originally from Ohio. What part?
I am from Columbus, Ohio.
Ooh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
So
right.
you're a transplant.
I am. I moved here after undergrad, so I did undergrad at Ohio State University. Joined AmeriCorps, so the National Service Program. I wanted to get some work experience, and I wanted to try living in a different city. So I ended up actually working in Waukegan.
Okay. So
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, so worked in Waukegan for a year, the Youth Conservation Corps, did some grant writing, and couldn't wait to live in Chicago. So 2004, I
Really?
moved to the city.
And 15 years later, you're running one of the wards.
Yeah, and Rogers Park was the neighborhood that I lived in when I first moved here.
Okay.
I like how you said that because I am the dream catcher. I am the dreams really do come true. I love those type of stories, and as you said, I just kind of want to point that out for our youngsters out there, and just for anyone out there that has some dreams and some things that they want to do.
Definitely.
You can definitely make it happen. It's possible.
Okay, so one of the things doing my research for today's interview, you replace a 28-year incumbent who he is self-styled as a trailblazer. For those who don't know, Alderman Hadden replaced Alderman Joe Moore.
Yes.
Alderman Joe Moore was in office from 1991
Yes.
up until 2019, 28-year spread. He has the dubious distinction of being the first elected official in the United States who introduced participatory budget, and that was back in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So let's springboard from that, because you turned around in 2010 and you were on the participatory budget project. What is that program? What did that deal with?
Sure, love to talk about it. So Alderman Moore was the first elected official to do this process, participatory budgeting. It's exactly what it sounds like. And this is where, Queenie, you like to break things down.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I learned how to just break things down.
Mm-hmm.
It's community members getting to decide how our money's spent. Like, that's
As
it.
it should be.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a process originally from Brazil, right?
Really?
1989, yep. Came out of a lot of people's movements and labor movements from Porto Alegre, Brazil, where people felt like they shouldn't have to be at the whims of whoever was elected in office on whether they were going to get their basic services, whether priorities were going to be met with their spending. So when a new progressive party came in power, the Labor Party, they worked with their base of constituents to not just make changes while they were in office, but to set up programs like participatory budgeting. So they were changing the whole process of how people decided how to spend dollars so that it could outlive them, right? So it's not just about who's in office. So I was a volunteer participant in the first process that we had in the 49th Ward that Joe did. The researchers that helped us, our community design the program, we created the participatory budgeting project.
Okay.
So 2010 was when we had a vote. The way it works in Chicago, and now it's practiced around the world, every continent, dozens of cities here in the United States. But basically, community members get to come up with the ideas. They learn about the budget. What are the things we can do? They spend a couple of months actually working with the city, working with government staff to flesh out these projects. And then we put them on a ballot, and the community gets to vote. Projects that get the most votes get funded with the money that we have available. It's a fantastic thing, and it's how I was really introduced to local government, how I met a lot of my neighbors. So a really important part of my particular journey and the work of participatory budgeting is about everyday people in the neighborhood having a say, working together to solve problems, and being able to set the agenda to even tell decision makers what are the things we want you to work on.
Okay, and for the audience who may be listening to us, if you have not heard of participatory budget or the automatic menu, there's a reason you haven't heard of it. Maybe you ought to go visit your alderman's office.
Yes, yes.
I'm just saying.
And I I was gonna touch on that as well, as far as for anyone that may be listening and they are within that community, where if they wanted to participate, if they wanted to start voting, how do they go about finding locations? How do they go about that process to be a part of the community voting for what's going on in the community?
So a good place to start is actually the nonprofit partner that helps to support this program is the Great Cities Institute at UIC.
UIC. Yeah.
And so they have a website that's pbchicago.org. So pbchicago.org. There you can find out if your ward participates. You can look at the types of projects that are there,
Wow.
and they keep the upcoming dates for meetings and assemblies.
Okay.
The typical timeline, we usually kick off in about April. In April, where in the participating wards, we'll start putting out flyers, letting people know how they can get involved, coming to a meeting and sharing their ideas. A lot of us use websites and online platforms, so people, if you can't make it to a meeting, you can still see what's happening or share your thoughts or ideas. And then we try to wrap up voting in around October.
Okay. Okay.
In your particular ward, because my understanding when I went through the program, you can drop the age, or your age for the people who get a vote. Now I know it was 16 in the 49th. Is it still 16, or did y'all raise it?
We lowered it to 14.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's the idea, right? Like it's not a lot of money. Like we've got $1 million. These are neighborhood improvements, and anybody who's impacted by it should have a say, right? And this is a great civic
Down to
education
14.
tool, right? Most of the participating wards do 14. There are whole cities that do youth programs. In Boston, they do a citywide youth process, right, where the mayor puts up $1 million for young people in Boston. Anyone can share ideas, but it's youth-led through the mayor's youth committee. And in order to vote, you can't be any older than 21.
Wow. You cannot be older than 21.
Than 21.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It puts a lot of responsibility and focus back on the children, because they are going to be the next adults. And so I understand that that's a good idea. It brings them in. It teaches them that
we need the civic education.
And we don't hear
don't
hear from the youth. When the teacher strike was going on, and that was
right.
it just didn't work out. But I wanted to get out there, and because everybody's reporting, everyone's talking to all the all the representatives, the teachers, things, and I don't think I saw anyone talking to the children that were out there. And because the adults can go back and forth and talk about, but it's the children that really are affected by the teacher strike. And I'm like, why, why is no one asking and talking to them? Because they want, let's find out what they want in the classrooms. Let's find out how they feel about what's going on, what's needed in their schools. Because we as adults say, okay,
Right.
it may be a
We
push.
ain't been in school in 20
Right,
years,
and
but
it
we
may
know what y'all need.
it may be a push and a pull because of adult politics
Right.
of what we feel I want, and I'm not gonna give because it's it's kind of that adult stuff versus what the children want. So I think that's
there's
great.
a lot of adultism. So in my time with the
14.
participatory budgeting project, I worked in cities from Denver to Oakland to Winnipeg, right?
Okay,
to
so
New
you did a lot of
York,
traveling with
right,
this
to
program.
Jackson, Mississippi,
Oh,
right?
Wait, Jackson, Mississippi.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Jackson,
That's
Mississippi.
Right.
They,
Jackson,
they're
Mississippi.
so they're
They've got some fantastic things with their people's movement assemblies that they're doing. The Malcolm X Grassroots Project. They've got their mayoral administration that's really centering community voice. So there's fantastic things. But in the almost 10 years that I spent working with communities around the country, I'll tell you, and this is all community designed, right? So we would start off with, great, we would ask community, who should participate, who should vote, what are the types of decisions that you think people should make? So a couple decision points were, who should vote, right? Do you have to be a registered voter? Is it just geographically based? And in 100% of the places, every community felt like if you live here and you pay taxes, you should have a say. So you don't have to be a registered voter. You live here, you pay taxes, you should have a say. Unanimous. The toughest question that communities struggled with was around age. There's a lot of adultism, and once we hit like that adulthood, all of a sudden we think that young people don't know what they're talking about, and so we would see real divides in people who felt like, oh, it should be 14, it should be 11, there should be no age restriction, or people who very firmly would feel like, well, you need to be 18. And I'll tell you, in working not just at the city level but also within schools, young people have all the exact same concerns that adults do. The first school process we did in Chicago was at Sullivan High School. So one of our high schools in Rogers Parks in the 49th Ward, fantastic place,
our rivals.
right? And Sullivan High School, their principal put up discretionary funds of his school budget, $25,000, and we did a participatory budgeting process, letting the students identify the issues. And you know what the number one issue they identified? Healthy school lunches.
wow.
Oh, I have a student in here that I'm surprised she didn't come running out waving her hands.
They wanted more vegetables. They wanted fresher options, right?
Fresh options. That's the biggest cry that I hear about.
The youth committee that Alderman Moore would have participate in his PB process, and that we had in our PB process. The top issues: lighting, public safety.
Their safety, yes.
Right? These are the same things. So we need to make more spaces for youth voices, especially when we need to create more space for their leadership in the future.
I think 14 that's a great age, because I as a parent, I do think that there is an age that you don't know you don't know what's best for you. I do, as a mom, I know what's best, but I definitely think at 14, at about 14 is about that age where
you're not asking them to come up with something. You're saying, hey, here's all the information that everyone else has. Here's all the good information in the data. What do you think?
And about that age, that's the age that you kind of start going out and venturing out in the world on your own for the most part.
I was working at 14.
Yeah. And so they're walking up and down the streets and starting to think and talk about business and credit and all type of things now.
Absolutely.
Dealing with school. So yeah. So before, I know you were going to something, but my question is, why is okay? We have this site that we can go and check and see if our ward participates in this. Why is every ward not participating?
Because it's not mandatory. It is dictated by the aldermen of each ward. And see, I think that should be something that should be expressed when you're running. One of the things that I will say, that when I ran for alderman, everyone who even my opposition, we all agreed. Participatory budget was something we all agreed to do. If we won, that's what we're going to do. Because, like, excuse me, Alderman Hadden said, we are the whims of the aldermen, and we have to deal with that all the time. So your sidewalk isn't fixed. And now they have, we actually went to the alderman, and we were told, oh well, you can come together, and for your sidewalk, you can put in $5,000. I believe it was 5,000, and get your sidewalk fixed.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Wait a minute, don't I pay taxes already?
The 50-50 match, yeah.
Right, but I said, don't I already pay taxes? What?
Well, I was coming for.
Oh, I know what you're coming
I
for.
was coming slightly for your head on that one, Paul. So, Mr. Collins, if you are in 3 years elected, will we have to participate? Yeah, I was coming. That's why I was coming.
That's not even a question for me. I believe in giving. One of the things that I always tell people that people should not be afraid of their government. The government should be afraid of their people, because we vote them in.
Yes.
We actually have the authority and the power. As long as we take control, we don't have to be afraid of them doing anything. Going along with what you said about UIC's Great City, they have a lot of information in great cities. They do a lot of studies, a lot of information they have available. All you have to do is go and ask, and they'll provide it to you.
Fantastic resource, yeah.
Very much so.
Next topic. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're moving right along. Alderman Hadden.
I love Paul.
With the explosion of the cannabis crave going on, what are your feelings on that subject? As far as the legality of it, do you think it is going to be beneficial to the city, or more specifically to your ward, or is it just another, I don't know. Day number one, there was $3.1 million made. Day number two, it was $2 million made. $5 million in 2 days is not a drop in the bucket. That's pretty good.
That's significant revenue.
So, what's your feelings on the cannabis craze just in general?
I'm excited that Illinois has finally moved to this path, right? Like, we needed to legalize it and tax it.
Because it was getting sold and consumed anyway.
People consume it. I think that there are a lot of opportunities we have. We have a medicinal dispensary in the 49th Ward that's been there for a few years. And they're in the process of getting their recreational license. I know a lot of the folks in the 49th Ward are very supportive of it.
It's like North Shore, right? Is it North? Is that right at North Shore?
Oh, no. We're far. So I'm all north of Devon. So we've got, Green Gate is on the 7300 block of Rogers. So it's like Rogers, so right Potawatomi Park.
Okay.
It's kind of tucked away.
Is the Walgreens right down from where the Walgreens is on the corner?
Like off of Clark, further west. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So I know residents have been very supportive of it. We're running into some snags, and I'm hopeful, and we'll continue to work as part of the city to make sure that we are creating the most opportunities for people to benefit from this industry, and I think that's the biggest piece. So making sure that we can use it as an economic development tool, and we've got some work to do to get there.
Yeah. So one of the things I look at is I base everything on our future on how it happened in our past, and it's amazing to me how there are these, like you said, these little snags, these little idiosyncrasies. Now I don't know how true it is, but they're saying, well, if you have your carry concealed, my fault. If you have your carry concealed or whatever, and then you go and you get not medicinal but recreational. I understand the difference, but the fact of the matter is, you're still smoking weed or eating it or whatever. You're still consuming it one way or the other, whether it's medical or not.
But you also have your CBDs and
right. Well, I mean, CBDs, I don't believe they're going to be put in it's the recreational one that they're focusing in on. But when people were like, let's say, West Virginia, when they were using all the pharmaceutical that could get you just as high or higher, there was no stagnation to that. You have all your guns and you still can use all this. You're getting 1 million pills a week.
There are going to be some holdovers, and I think actually, so I'm not on the licensing committee,
Okay.
but I sat in on about the last 30 minutes of the meeting yesterday, and we had two public comments, and one was a gentleman who I think in his 3 minutes summed up all the shortfalls, right, that we as government still have to meet. And this was both at the state and city level, but a couple things that he kept hammering home that I think rang true is that cannabis is not alcohol, right? Cannabis is, they're not opioids, right?
Correct.
Like, not all substances are the same. The impacts are not the same. How they affect people are not the same. And that we still have some ways to go in really coming up with innovative things. And we do have some limitations at the state level, particularly as we're struggling with the on-site consumption laws. And also, this goes to your earlier point, you know what, this is our first time out, right?
Yeah.
We've got, our state legislators have built on the work of previous states' work, from lessons learned. They spent several years putting this together, and it's not going to be perfect because, of course, it was built legislatively, right?
Correct.
With all of Illinois. And also, we can change it, right?
Right.
Like, we're going to try this out. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to see what we need to change, and then we can lobby our state legislators to make the changes that we need in order to make the ways. And I think that on the on-site consumption piece, our public commenter yesterday was like pointing to Amsterdam and Colorado, like, hey, why are you limiting on-site consumption and food? And he jokingly, I don't think he was joking, but I thought it was funny. He said, "Do you guys not all understand the relationship
for food?" And I already know that's going.
Like, why can't we have it in places with food, right? The state law says we can't right now. Maybe we need to update state law, and we're going to see how this works.
Well, I mean, there's that's a big thing. Everyone needs to understand what the laws are, specifically with what their consumption is. Like, we still have this question of, well, if I'm smoking on the back porch, now the mayor has said the police will not arrest you or they will not fine you.
No,
CPD haven't said that.
Well,
and see, that's the big disconnect because, see, if
right
you
now
have
it
laws,
seems to be just inside of your inside of your home.
Enforcement's not going to be, what the mayor says. The superintendent does answer to the mayor.
But it's the street off. See, that's the problem. And the reason I bring that up is because I recently posted on our website that they have discovered that CPD often makes changes on their stops. When they make their stops and they do their reports, they have rewritten their reports several times, often with the help of a supervisor, to justify their stops, meaning that they have unlawfully, illegally, and unconstitutionally stopped people, wrote them up, or arrested them. I ain't gonna get into your personal business.
I actually saw that done on New Year's. I mean,
or the day before New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. And there was what you just described is actually what happened. And there wound up being an old set of paperwork and a new set of paperwork. Yeah.
We've got a long way to go on that too. You'll see if you today I sat through our law settlement briefings. And every month we get law settlement briefings, and so far 100% of all the settlement briefings that I've been privy to have been involving police misconduct, right? Or questionable behavior, and that it's such a vulnerability. And the work on the consent decree, and I guess I'll throw in here on the 25th, actually. So Network 49, it's our independent political organization in the 49th Ward. We're one of the Campbell plaintiffs, so one of the plaintiffs in the consent decree, and with some of our legal partners at Northwestern, we are going to be hosting an update. So we're going to be having a meeting. Yeah, like I'll be sharing it via socials. But so Network 49 and Northwestern are going to be kind of doing updates on where are we right now, right, with consent decree updates. Okay. And those were certainly some hot topics of questions that several of my colleagues and I had. Within our briefing, right, with our legal team.
Yes.
Where are these? What's the holdup, and how can we make this move faster?
Now, one of my concerns with the legalization and going back to the legalization, and then also dealing with our police and our law enforcement system here in Chicago, How does that change? Because I did actually hear some of the training videos that was going on, and I do know that they are right now sitting in and watching videos. There's these new videos that are just basically, training on how to stop when it's recreational marijuana involved, and which it was basically just talking about where you can and you cannot, and what will happen and what won't happen if you're caught smoking marijuana on the streets, on the corner, versus in your car. They did speak about that. Like if your car, even if your car is parked, you can't smoke inside of the vehicle, even if it's parked, things like that. But now that was the training on stopping if it's involved. My worries and my thoughts are, now that this is in effect, granted, people are altered. You're altered. So is this going to bring more problems for how the police conducts with the community? Because people are going to be a little altered now. So is there going to be, extensive training on?
No.
Yeah.
There's not going to be extensive training
of course
with law
it's not.
enforcement.
But I'm asking this rhetorical question. But of course my point is there going to be a training on now how to address the situation if someone is a bit altered off of marijuana? I mean, because if a person is a bit altered, they're a little slow or whatever, aggressive behavior from the police and things like that. If a person is altered, they may be a little high and they might not.
So let me focus you in on this. How much training have the police and law enforcement had when dealing with people with mental problems that walk around every day? None.
Yeah.
None. And so it's going to be the same situation.
Yeah.
And so you have to just think about it on this level. One of the many reasons that law enforcement will stop your car and say, "Oh, I smell marijuana. Now I need to search your vehicle." Well, marijuana is legal. I can smoke wherever I was smoking. It's on me. You smell it in my car. So see, there's all these different aspects. Right.
You are right about now. I didn't even think about that. You're right about that.
Right.
Well, you can smell it. I was driving here with my windows up at a stoplight.
That's right.
You smell it from somebody else's
right.
car.
It's all around.
It's pervasive.
And in the building I work at, we have a outdoor vent. And so one of the guys came. He says, "Hey, I just want to let you know there's a smell in here, and it's not me." And I went, "No, I know. People walk by, and it gets sucked into the ventilation system, and it circulates. So it's just a high city."
But that's. But you're
city.
really right about that. I didn't think about that. Like, I mean, can they create a, like you have the little pen that you swipe across $100 bill to see if it's a real $100 bill? Do they have like a little pen to swipe on your seat or something to see if you were smoking in the car versus the smell on your clothing?
You can't depend on that. Because here's the thing. Like you said, you can't be parked in your car on the street. Well, what if I'm in my garage and I'm sitting in my car and I'm smoking? That's legal because it's in my property.
And then when you pull out,
and when I pull out, so you see?
You get stopped, you're not actually smoking.
Right.
But the car has the smell, but you were in your garage. And see, those are those gray areas that, those are the gray areas that if that happens and you actually say that to a police officer, are they going to believe you or,
It's going to be, we're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we have 10 other states to turn to, but ultimately that's why it was important to have the decriminalization first, which is what we had, right? Because it is about changing attitudes and culture, right? It's not just the policy, it's the practice and the attitudes and culture. And we're in a time of change, and folks are going to get with the program, or they're going to go.
I
hope
think
so.
the community needs to understand.
As you said, though, it was a time of change. Under Rahm Emanuel, there was a point where he had decriminalized arresting people for cannabis, for having it, and we noted that we could statistically show that Northside, Rogers Park, your people, you got ticketed.
Yes.
Southside, Ninth
Well-
Ward, 8th Ward, they got arrested.
They got
Well,
arrested.
and
There's
I-
no tickets going on
and
yet.
I
West
might-
side too.
I might push a little bit, maybe more on the north central side.
There we go with that west
Yeah,
side,
you
south
know,
side.
yeah.
I'm telling you,
The west side of up north.
All right.
There are plenty of people in certain areas of Rogers Park who would feel like they're not treated much differently than.
Oh,
And they
definitely. Yeah.
probably have
Yeah.
they have some standing on that. I
Yeah.
give them that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's
Moving
move on. This one is big, citywide. Alderman Hadden, you joined when new progressive members joined the new got sworn in the new council. You guys protested against the approval of the tax increment financing (TIF) for the Lincoln Yards and the 78 real estate developments. Now, I personally, I want to thank you and I appreciate you standing up for us and your constituents in your area, because many people, but black people in particular in this city, felt as though the monies used for Lincoln Yards and the 78 real estate development was a continual betrayal of them by the powers that be. So, due to that fact, are there any plans in the works to ensure that any future TIF money be used in line with its original intent, which was to stimulate private investment in blighted areas that has been designated to be in need of economic revitalization? That's the original intent of TIF, people. So, Alderwoman, excuse me.
Absolutely, yes. There are plans. So this was a central piece during campaigning, and also something really important to not just the 49th Ward residents, but I think most Chicagoans that I speak of. So one, as you talk about TIF, right, the tax increment financing, I like to highlight for people, this is a development tool used throughout the country and in most places without controversy, because they use it in the way that it was
It was
intended.
designed to
Right?
be used.
Oh, we have an area that is
Except
not had,
Chicago.
right? We abuse this program.
We are elected officials.
Yes, some of our decision makers have historically abused this program at the detriment of neighborhoods that really need the investment, right? I am happy to be a part of the Chicago Progressive Reform Caucus. Several members who've been in office longer have pushed for TIF reform. So one of the big pieces is the Back to Basics TIF ordinance, and this is an ordinance that we're working on our priorities for 2020. But this looks like it'll be kind of at the top of the stack again now that we've got an expanded Progressive Caucus, right?
Okay.
We've got I think we have 17, maybe 18. I forget how many people we have. We have a lot. We have a lot of folks in our Progressive Caucus. But this would specifically recodify, this is what we use TIF for, this is not what we use TIF for.
Okay.
If a project does not meet, right, because that flexibility, like one of the big things about the 78 in Lincoln Yards, I think it was the Lincoln Yards project that, Mayor Emanuel and the last city council body pushed that through, right?
Oh,
They
yeah.
pushed it through that last meeting.
Big
so
time.
that when we got sworn in, we didn't really have a choice. But once some of the reporting and like the assessment details came in, and a month later, there's a good chance that legally that Lincoln Yards project wouldn't have qualified for our TIF program, right? So we have to stop giving away our investment tools and our dollars to large private developments that don't need it. We aren't broke as a city, but we do have limited resources and revenues. And this gets back to why.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Sure.
I
We are
was,
not. We
you
are not.
know,
What?
We're
That
not,
was like
we're not
ding,
We're
broke,
not
ding.
right?
broke, because
We're not broke.
that's what they see. They keep
Oh.
pushing this thing that Chicago
city
is
is
broke.
broke.
We can't pay school teachers. We can't do
It's
this. We can't do
broke.
that.
No, it's
but I
not.
see all this development in downtown. They are
Yes.
constantly built. So if the city is
Yes.
broke, why
My
would they be building
drive
these
is
hotels?
horrible.
We're not broke, and also, right, we don't have unlimited resources when we think about our public dollars. So much of why the angle around budgeting and like my experience in that first year volunteering was so powerful is because we should be able to set the priorities for what we want our government to focus on.
Correct.
And that's budget our values documents. How we spend our money is a direct indication of what's important to us.
Budget is
right?
just the word budget is just like ding ding ding.
Yeah.
You know, the brain, the light, the
Yeah.
brain light, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding.
Yeah.
That's what is
Yeah.
budget.
How are we
and
spending our money?
yeah.
You can see whether it's explicit or implicit what's important to decision makers in this city. And so even people who couldn't, anybody who lives in the city and has lived here and experienced life here for a significant portion of their life, they may not be an economist, they may not be a developer, they may not be a lawyer, but people can tell you, oh, you're spending all that money there? That means you don't care about my neighborhood. That means you don't care about my school. That means you don't care about my thing. And that direct connection is there, whether politicians and electeds understand it or not. We know what's important to our city based on how we spend our money, and that's why we need to change our priorities.
You know what they call Lincoln Yards on the street? They call it Mini Dubai.
That's what it's going to look like.
Exactly. And so you look at that, and then you go back to, and I am not a West Sider, I'm a South Sider, but no, I don't have any, I have love for the West Side. I just don't have the area that I can call out like I can the South Side. But the money that was spent on Lincoln Yards, what could they have done if they wanted to redevelop the 10th and 9th Ward where the port's at and the old steel mills and all of that?
And this is where, and one of the things about TIF, and I know this is where folks who are supportive of these developments, any development, especially new developments, will bring in future tax dollars. And a lot of what we do with our TIF financing, it's an incremental break. So one thing that's important for people to understand, right, this is not money that we have in hand that we are giving to people up front. And so whether it's TIF or whether there are other class and tax incentives that we're doing in the Economic Development Committee, a lot of it is future potential money. And so that's frequently why the argument is made, right? Like, okay, well, Lincoln Yards and 78, it's not out of pocket money, and now they're going to do this development and improvements, and we're going to get some taxes from them, right? And then technically, theoretically, we can use it. But these are our tools that we have, and what we should be using to direct development to the places where we need it most.
Right. Because the idea, what you're saying is that, let's use Lincoln Yards as an example. We're looking at the future taxation of what they have there.
Right.
But the problem with that is the ownership of that is owned by the very wealthy who have all the tax breaks to begin with. So the expected tax increment that we might get, we're not going to get as much because they get tax breaks because they're the rich.
There are all kinds of complications. It's a gamble, right? It's a gamble. And that's why we should use the programs, and why TIF, as initially designed, is for us in the city to be able to direct development where we think we need it, right?
Correct.
Where we think it's going to benefit us.
Question, just off the top of my head.
Oh, he's going freelance.
I know.
Well, it's in line with what we're thinking about, though. Casinos, land-based casino in the city of Chicago. Now, I got hit real hard. I got decimated in my campaign because I said, look, we're losing revenue because people are going over to Indiana, especially out south. They're going right. They have a bus.
Where we are.
Right, and they take them to Indiana, to
Mm-hmm.
Hammond, and they spend all that money.
Even
have minibuses.
Even from Chinatown.
I was just gonna say there's many buses, many locations. I went on one before.
my thought, I was like, look, I understand it's a detriment. However, people are gonna spend that money anyway.
So
if they're gonna spend it anyway, why not make it easier for the city of Chicago, the residents of the city of Chicago, to spend the money here? So that was my thing. I got hit hard for that. But what do you think?
So I think casinos fall into the category of like stadiums to me, right? A lot of cities and local governments look to these big projects, and because there will be activity, but I think it's important to remember that it's a closed system, right? So, okay, great. So we build a casino and there's some activity and we generate some revenue. But one, it's not going to be that much revenue for us. It's going to be a lot for the state to a certain degree. But also, where's that money coming from? It's coming from our people. And if we're competing just with our border state, what is it like? We're just going to further devastate particular areas, is my personal opinion. Like, now I know there's going to be a license that will probably be a Chicago casino, but I think that focusing on it as an economic tool is it's not the way to go, right? So think about, let's say we get a successful casino, and let's say we create a bunch of jobs, right? and folks get to work there, who's making that casino successful? Like, we all know the large numbers of folks who are participating in casinos. Like, that can be fun, but typically they're not wealthy people, right? They're not wealthy people spending their money in casinos. Forget addiction issues, but like, all right, maybe we're drawing business then away from Indiana, but then what does that do to Indiana? How's that further impoverishing their area? What's the economic impact? And while we're different states and we might have different budgets, those borders are arbitrary, right? So now what's happening along our shared border? How are our neighbors who maybe now are more impacted and poorer? What's that doing for poverty? What's that doing for health? What's that doing for crime? What's that doing for trafficking? What's that doing for other illicit businesses? Like, I think that it's a huge problem, actually, that we're not thinking about fully, because it's like, oh yeah, well, we're going to be the city and we're the state and this is going to be our thing, but we really need to look at the broader economic and social impacts. Even done best, it'll generate some money. We'll have it.
Yeah.
But, I'm not super thrilled about it.
Understood. And I'll say this: there's only one person that I'm aware of, one casino that faltered and went bankrupt. There's only one casino that I know did that, and it has a person's name attached to it. But that notwithstanding, I do understand you're saying we should look at the totality of what affects not only our state but the states around us, and I grant you that. I kind of have a little different thing on our state over to our east, because a lot of our businesses have closed shop and went over there because they were offered lower taxes, which I don't blame the companies for, but it's like, you're not stealing our businesses or our companies, but you are making a way for them to leave a lot easier. So you're impacting our communities by doing that. And then a lot of the illegal and illicit guns come from that state over here. And so I just say, if we're going to be considerate of them, they need to be considerate of us as well.
I don't mean it as being considerate of that state. I mean thinking about our local economy, specifically with our Indiana border. The businesses might come and go, and that might have an impact at the state level, but what we really see are impacts at the community level on people, right? Okay. So, like, think about, forget if it was a casino, what if right across the border there's 2 coffee shops, but I'm over here in Illinois and we don't have a coffee shop on the Illinois side? Is it still a smart market decision for me to put a coffee shop, like, right over here on the Illinois side? And maybe I draw some business because my coffee shop is newer, but what does that do to the coffee shops over there? And honestly, it's about who's working, who's being employed, who gets laid off, and we know the people that are going to end up suffering are the people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But that's all. Just like, we need to think and be smart about it. I would love to see, when we go with the casino, I would love to see publicly owned options, because that's the thing too. Like, even
wow.
If we own the casino, we have controls, and at least we're benefiting from what kind of revenue, like, directly, right? Similarly with cannabis, why don't we have city-owned cannabis?
And see, you're doing a very valid point.
Well,
what's the problem, Queen?
No, I think some of the things that we talk about, this is an ongoing thing with My Lives Become Shut Down.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
But luckily, I still be able to put it on YouTube, and we only have like 15 minutes before the alderwoman has to leave.
And I definitely want to. I want you to really elaborate. And finish. I know you guys are having this conversation, but before you get out of here, I want you to elaborate just on yourself. Who you are in the community, what's your plans, what's your goals, and also touch on resources, what's going on in the Rogers Park community that the residents can, in the immediate or in the near future, benefit from.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we have one last question from me.
Yep.
It has 3 parts.
And then you close up with...
And then I close up.
And then
you go
up,
you go ahead.
Yep.
Okay. So we were just made aware that recently CVS Pharmacy closed shop in the 17th Ward, Alderman Moore, David Moore. Just last year, Target closed its doors in the 6th Ward and 34th Ward. Yep. Each of these moves were heavy blows to those communities.
We had our CVS closed on 103rd and Halsted.
Oh, yeah, you are correct.
Yeah.
And the Walgreens, I heard the Walgreens on 95th and King Drive closed. The Walgreens on 95th and Jeffrey closed.
Right by
so we're
Chicago
losing
State.
constantly. One, has your ward experienced any of these type of surprise closures? That's first question. Secondly, if something of that nature happened in your ward, do you have some sort of, I know you just got in, any kind of contingency plan to counter it or maybe make it so that they might not want to leave? And third, and most importantly, how are you building up your ward economically? All right, go.
Sure.
Oh, that was pretty much
Yeah.
the ending question was pretty much my
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, we're not experiencing this too much, but a couple different things about the 49th, and then we'll talk about it in terms of different parts of the city that we know are impacted differently, right? With our history of segregation and all kinds of issues. So 49th, we're pretty small, so we're almost entirely like East Rogers Park, a little bit of Westridge. One of the strongest things about our economy is that a lot of our businesses are locally owned. So we have a lot of
Big
small,
thing.
Yes.
locally owned businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a really high density,
Yes.
and so we have stronger commercial corridors, right? We got a lot of people in a small area that can, visit that dry cleaners or
Yeah.
that little
I would
grocery
say
store.
majority of the
and
businesses, other than like
So
maybe
many-
Sheridan,
Yeah,
that has.
we have very
commercial.
few chains or large commercials,
Mhm.
and that has its ups and downs, right? But I'll tell you, the Target's closing, right, in the 6th and the 34th. When Target was closing those two stores, they were trying to open a store in Rogers Park, right?
I know that was kind of like
they
a.
opened a store in Rogers Park, and it was when I worked for AT&T, I actually had parts of the 6th Ward in my sales territory, so I was pretty familiar with that Target, and it's this gets again to our city policies, right? When we talk about how we're incentivizing businesses. And I know the mayor said this, and I hope that she's able to act on it, but it's certainly a priority, I know for me, not just for my ward, but for other wards in the city. We should not have allowed a Target to open in Rogers Park. And I'll tell you, so the Target opened at Devon and Sheridan and Broadway, okay, busy intersection right by Loyola University. But right at Wilson and Broadway is another Target.
The Target, yes.
And then over
Yes.
at Peterson and Western
So
is another
oversaturation.
Target.
Mhm.
And then there's on Howard Street on the Evanston side, there's a
There's
Target.
Yeah.
We have
yes.
multiple Targets.
So wait a minute. They closed the only Target
Yep.
in the 9th and 34th Ward,
Yep.
which was doing, to my knowledge, because that lot was always full, big business, to open another one in an already saturated area.
Absolutely. And in order for the Target to open in Rogers Park, so it was a well planned deal that involved CHA land,
Of
a
course.
private developer,
Mhm.
and we did get 60 plus new units of affordable CHA housing, right? That's on
Okay.
top of the Target. It did mean that 500 unit CHA senior housing building, Carolyn Hedger, had to go through a lot of hell during construction, lose their common senior space, lose their parking. Things have been replaced since, but it was a lot of disruption. It's also a very busy corner, but we have to look at these businesses as a whole and see what they're doing. And to the last piece there, a big part of my economic plan for the 49th Ward, and hopefully things that we can learn and practice in other spaces, is to continue to support those locally owned businesses. So we're looking at cooperative models. How do we use and leverage more of our community resources to own more of our space? One of the biggest challenges right now is that we do have a lot of locally owned businesses, but a lot of those owners, they don't own their land.
Right.
They don't own
right.
the property,
right.
right? So they may run that business and it's doing
But
well.
they don't own the
but
property.
The biggest challenges for our small business owners, and this is all over the city, right? We haven't had a lot of economic dollars or investment in Rogers Park in quite some time for most of our buildings and commercial areas. Raising rents are starting to go up. Those commercial rents are rising.
I was going to say
steeply
that
all over the
where
city.
these Targets are popping up, those are the gentrified
Yeah.
Well,
communities.
we got
almost.
to do the McDonald's model.
One
buy
of
your
our
land.
one of our great
Yeah.
coffee shops, Royal Coffee. We have a lot of great coffee shops. All independent coffee shops, right? Royal Coffee, Ethiopian food and coffee, fantastic. They closed. Sad to see them go. They're doing a little pop up in one of our grocery stores in Devon Market, but they had been there for 10 years, and their rent, I forget what percentage, but it was going up by like 25, 30%, right?
Wow.
It was one of their major
Wow.
decisions in closing. So we are seeing those rising commercial rents. And then we also have a lot of commercial landowners who aren't taking care of their property. So when I was looking for a ward office space, right? Basic requirements. I don't need a kitchen. I don't need anything fancy. I just need a box, right? That's accessible. Finding good quality space that didn't, I still had to put $25,000 worth of work into my space. And I know this is a challenge in other neighborhoods in the city where these commercial owners hold on to their spaces, they don't take care of them, and then they want to charge small business owners and entrepreneurs through the nose, like year over year. I had a local business that just moved out of one building on Morris where my office is located. They moved into my building. We've got some great landlords. Things are good. So she moved into my building because her landlord, she'd been there for years. Her landlord was raising the rent like $400 to $500 like every other year, and
Every other year.
every other year, and told them that he was going to start making them pay their share of the property taxes.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the building in terrible condition. So she didn't say anything. She just found another space and moved. And luckily, we were able to keep her in the neighborhood, right? But that's what happens. Like, it's hard enough being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my focus is on the economic development piece. Like, what are we doing? How are we working maybe with our county partners, right? To make sure that commercial owners are taking care of their spaces, that they're not getting tax write-offs for their vacancies.
That's the
Just
big
talked
thing.
to Paul about. That's what I dealt with on 79th.
We're dealing with things right now with safety. Also, but you have to make these people responsible for their property tax.
Yes.
You have to make sure, and you also have to do the inspections to make sure the electrical is up, the plumbing is up, all of that. All that falls on the owner.
We've had several fires because of, right? We had a tragic story. Luckily, no one died. But we had this woman, she and her family opened a brand new business, like a little sweet shop on Clark Street. Within the first week before she opened, there was a fire in the building, faulty wiring, and it impacted 3 businesses. She was brand new. She didn't have her insurance yet, and she lost her business before it started.
We flooded, and you know, like you said, as far as with entrepreneurs or even just other commercial franchises, things like that, because you know you have real estate agents, things like that it's a franchise, but it's hard enough to run your business and have to give rent to someone that's not taking care of a property. And I know one of my issues, I barely saw my profits because I was repairing the ceiling that fell twice, or you know, people are repairing things that the building that should be within the building maintenance or within that. So,
but see, that's another thing too. We have to educate.
Everywhere.
We have to educate our consumers.
There's that checklist.
Multiple things. Like for instance, and this is, I bought my house when I was 23 years old. I never knew about the homeowners exemption.
Balloon rates.
Where you staying there. And so I paid through a mortgage. So that money always got paid. I never got an exemption because, I didn't know I was supposed to get one. And they never told me. And so when we don't know things, we don't even know to look for it, because I didn't know that. I thought this is just what the mortgage is.
I definitely think we should have some training.
And that's what I thought.
Training places.
I thought the alderman's office, you're supposed to take care of the constituents of your ward. So anything your people need.
Just educating the people on, you know, if educating entrepreneurs on starting businesses, educate people on their property taxes, educate, you know, the community. I definitely think every ward should probably have some type of little office location where they have regular or hold regular training courses, just minor, you know, just minor training.
That's one of the hopefully one of the best things we'll see out of the Invest Southwest plan, right? Is I think there's like 5 kind of small business centers in that plan. We'll see how that's implemented, but in that specific focus that the planning department and the mayor have out is technical assistance information in place in the south and west sides of the city for entrepreneurs and small business owners to get that exposure. And I know it is one of the challenges in 49. We still don't have a racial majority, so there's we are seeing an increase in the white population in the 49th ward. So it's about 40% white folks. Still about a little about 30% black folks and the rest Latinx. But we have a large amount of immigrants, right? Refugees. and like returning citizens. And entrepreneurship is a very important path for a large percentage of 49th Ward people to economic stability.
Definitely.
We have a
Definitely.
lot of folks who a lot of traditional avenues are not open to them, and so it's one of the focal points we have.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you
I got
answering
five.
all my questions. You got something else?
I got it.
Well,
So one
remember,
minute.
we only got 1 minute.
We got
Go.
1 minute.
1 minute.
So 1 minute.
Yeah.
What's going on in the 49th Ward? What's going on for the community places? Anything that right off the top of your head where residents can benefit from?
All right, so immediate things, my office. So we're at 1447 West Morse, so we're at Morse and Greenview.
Okay.
So we're open Monday through Friday. Folks should go to our website, so 49thward.org. It's 49thward.org. I do a weekly newsletter. We do community events. If you have community events, you can send it to us. We put it in the newsletter. Updates on schools, business development, job postings, like whatever info. So we do a pretty robust newsletter every week. I do monthly town halls, so we don't have our January 1 scheduled yet, but they tend to be towards the end of the month.
Okay.
And then we do Wednesday ward nights. So every Wednesday, 5 to 7, open office hours, come in, whatever we can help you with. Some of the information that we're going to be focusing on this month and getting out to folks are going to be around recreational campus, right? Like what's happening, what's coming up. Also, changes to SNAP benefits, right? So we had briefings today with the Greater Chicago Food Depository, really helpful, and the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless on what's coming with those changes to SNAP benefits. My office is definitely going to be doing some workshops for folks and outreach to let people know what to do. There are lots of opportunities for exemptions. Other big things coming up is we're going to start kind of our volunteer committees.
Okay.
So we're going to have a youth committee. We're going to have an elder committee. We've got a few different things coming up. We've got a kind of community safety and wellness. And then lastly, I mentioned the 25th, so it's a Saturday. We're partnering with Network 49 and Northwestern to do a community update and kind of town hall around the police consent decree.
Outstanding.
I would love for Leslie to email. Just we've already been in contact through the email. So have Leslie shoot us everything that you just spoke on. Have her shoot that over to us. Addresses, times, dates, and we will make sure we have that on our social media, things like that, so we can and as even if it's coming in weekly, we can at least have somewhere. So and you can also announce that for social media, things like that. We can definitely get that information out to the Rogers Park residents as well. So we can definitely help.
Yeah, and then lastly, I'm celebrating my birthday.
Oh yeah,
on the 20th.
yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy
I'll
birthday.
be turning 39, so
39. I'll be
welcome.
39 this year.
There we go, 81 babies.
Yes, 81. Yes.
Yeah, I got nothing to say about that.
Yeah. What you got to say now, Paul?
Nothing.
Thank you both for having me on.
Thank you for
Well,
coming.
thank you.
Gracing
Thank
us
you
with
for
your
coming.
presence.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it sounds like you are definitely on the path for some greatness within Rogers Park. Sounds like you really have a focus and a heart for the community. And so I want to say blessings on all of the future endeavors. We hope that everything that you were possibly trying to do for the community gets done.
Thank you.
And we just congratulate you and wish all the best for you.
Oh, thank
Don't
you.
be a stranger.
I won't be. Thank you for the coffee.
Yes.
Thank you for the hospitality.
Come back at some point.
Yeah.
You can, if there is anything that you feel like you may want to go ahead and get out over social media, have Leslie contact us, and we'll definitely invite
put a
you back
blast
in.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
All
Well,
right.
Thank you guys.
Alrighty. And
Alderwoman
that is a wrap.
Maria Hadden, thank you so much.
All right.
As remember, we're going to give thanks out to Sour Patch Media for sponsoring us this week. To my hostess, Queenie Green.
Yes.
The most.
I'm glad to see you back in action.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alderman Maria Hadden, for gracing us with your presence and your information.
Yes. Be safe on your travels back, and yes, don't be a stranger. Keep us posted on what's going on.
So I'm going to say goodbye to her, so if you can take over, I'll be right back.
Alrighty. So please make sure you check in with us. We do this here every Thursday from 5:30 to 7 p.m. We are bringing as much of the topics that we can dealing with the community. We are trying to do our due diligence in connecting with our city officials, our aldermen, alderwomen, and our public officials. This is the Windy City Review, where Chicago politics comes to you. So that being said, we're trying to bring just more uplifting and empowering and connecting the bridge, connecting the gap with the politicians and what's going on with politics in our